On December 10, 2021, one of the most prolific and deadly tornado outbreaks in recent history unfolded across portions of the central United States. Over 70 tornadoes touched down, killing 89 people and injuring at least 650 more. With its timing in early December, this tornado outbreak caught much of the general public off guard. In this video, we will be discussing one of those tornadoes, a long-tracked EF4 that tore through portions of Kentucky, killing 57 and destroying several towns in its path. We'll take a deep dive into the setup behind this outbreak, the tornado, and the devastating impacts it had. Contrary to popular belief, tornadoes in December are not uncommon in the slightest. In fact, there are many examples of violent, deadly tornadoes occurring in the late winter months, including an F5 in Sunfield, Illinois in 1957 that killed 3, and 2 separate EF4s in 2015 that touched down just 3 days apart, killing a total of 19 people. Another more recent example could be the December 2023 tornado outbreak that killed 7 people, including the Nashville EF2 and Clarksville EF3. So while they are less common than springtime tornado events, wintertime tornadoes can and do still occur. As far as the 10th, it was very well forecasted. The SPC had outlooks indicating the possibility of tornadoes and severe weather 3 days ahead of time. The setup looked something like this. A deep digging trough set itself up across the central U.S. This advected warm, moist air into the area's east, bringing temps into the low 70s and dew points into the mid to high 60s, both sufficient for severe storms. Here's a proximity sounding from the 3Z wrap on the 11th, or 9 p.m. Central on the 10th. The photograph indicates clearly that the shear profiles favor significant tornadoes, with over 450 meters squared per second squared of 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity, and over 250 meters squared per second squared of SRH within half of a kilometer of the surface, both very high and concerning values. MU CAPE values sat around 1,000 joules per kilogram, and 3 CAPE values around 70. And those seem low, but the reality is with these wintertime events, you don't need as much instability to get storms going as you would for a springtime event. Any thunderstorm that would fire, develop, and remain discrete would have the opportunity to produce a long-tracking, intense tornado. Knowing this, the Storm Prediction Center issued a 4 out of 5 moderate risk for the areas shown, highlighting the elevated risk for significant tornadoes. A tornado watch was issued at 3 p.m., yet again indicating the heightened risk for intense tornadoes. Around 5 p.m., a supercell fired in central Arkansas and quickly began intensifying. This supercell ended up producing a deadly EF4 that tracked over 3 states, killing 8 people. The tornado eventually lifted in northwest Tennessee before recycling and entering western Kentucky. Then, it dropped one of the deadliest tornadoes in recent history. The tornado touched down in extreme northwest Tennessee at around 8:50 p.m. and began moving northeast. It was initially very weak, producing minor EF0 to EF1 damage to trees and homes in primarily rural areas. However, the tornado began to intensify within a few minutes as more significant EF2 damage was observed at some homes just north of the Kentucky-Tennessee border. The tornado began rapidly intensifying as it approached the small town of Cayce. Now at EF4 strength, the tornado directly impacted the southern edge of Cayce, leaving behind widespread destruction. Many homes and businesses received EF4 damage as several were entirely demolished. Significant ground scouring would be observed close to the town as topsoil would be ripped out of the ground. One person would lose their life before the tornado would leave Cayce. For the next portion of its path, the tornado crossed over primarily rural areas, impacting no major population centers, but EF3 level damage was still observed as transmission towers were collapsed. Terrifying videos from this tornado showcase the nighttime wedge tornado, only visible by flashes of lightning. The tornado then set its eyes on the next city, Mayfield. The city of 10,000 was placed under a tornado emergency as the violent tornado approached. At EF4 strength, the tornado roared through the city, leaving behind mass devastation all across the downtown area. Dozens of homes and businesses were leveled all across Mayfield, and the city was left unrecognizable. The Mayfield Consumer Products Candle Factory took an extremely heavy hit, with 110 employees inside. Tragically, 8 of the employees working at the time lost their lives. The Graves County Courthouse also took a hit from the monster, as many walls and portions of the roof collapsed as a result of the winds from the tornado. By the time that the tornado had left Mayfield, 400 structures had been destroyed and 24 had lost their lives. After hitting Mayfield, the tornado continued northeast, now inching closer to the town of Benton, as a tornado emergency would be put into place. While the tornado passed north of the downtown area, some buildings on the outskirts of the town experienced EF3 level damage, and one poorly anchored home was completely destroyed and swept clean off of its foundation. The tornado continued moving northeast, and at EF4 intensity, it impacted Cambridge Shores, a small town sitting on the edge of the Kentucky Lake. Several homes in the small community were demolished as EF4 damage was observed all across the town. Continuing northeast of the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area, the tornado continued producing EF3 level damage as it was rapidly approaching the town of Princeton. Another tornado emergency would be put into place for the town as the monster tornado approached. The tornado roared through Princeton, destroying many homes and businesses throughout town. Homes around the Golf and Country Club in Princeton experienced the worst of the damage as EF3 to EF4 level damage was widespread throughout this area. Trees would be debarked with large sheets of metal wrapped around them, and even more homes would be destroyed. The tornado would kill 4 and injure many more before leaving Princeton. It would then briefly weaken to EF2 intensity before rapidly re-intensifying and setting its sight on the next town, Dawson Springs. For the 4th time, a tornado emergency would be issued for the town of Dawson Springs as the wedge monster tornado approached. The town would then take a direct hit from the beast, with widespread destruction being a common sight. A 2-story apartment building would be almost entirely destroyed, as only a couple interior walls remained standing. Homes and businesses would be destroyed, cars would be mangled and tossed, trees would be debarked, and more clear indicators of extreme damage were observed all across Dawson Springs. Before the tornado would leave the town, 14 more people would lose their lives, and numerous others were injured. Weakening slightly, the tornado continued northeast towards Barnsley in Hopkins County. The town, like Dawson Springs, took a direct hit from the invisible monster, destroying almost every single structure in town. While in town, the tornado derailed a CSX freight train, with some train cars being dismantled or destroyed and then tossed. Hundreds of trees in the town were downed, with some experiencing significant debarking. As the tornado left Barnsley and began approaching the next town in the path, Bremen, Eddie Knight captured frightening footage north of Bremen and Sacramento of the invisible wedge tornado, only visible by either power flashes or lightning strikes. Another tornado emergency would be issued for Bremen as the monster continued its rampage. Similar to the rest of the path, many homes impacted in Bremen were completely decimated. Over 100 residences were obliterated by the winds of the high-end EF4 tornado. It was in Bremen where the tornado possibly reached EF5 intensity, as a well-constructed home was swept clean off of its foundation, with the debris being tossed a considerable distance. A portion of the foundation was broken off and tossed as well, but the main reason that this house did not receive the EF5 rating was because of a lack of contextual evidence, which simply means damage supportive of an EF5 was not found around the destroyed home. In Bremen, 11 lost their lives and many more were injured. By this point, the tornado had been on the ground for over 2 hours and had been tracking for over 110 miles. The tornado weakened slightly to EF3 strength before passing over the northern edge of Hartford. More significant structural damage was observed in the town, as even more homes and businesses were heavily damaged or destroyed. From there, the tornado began to weaken significantly, and finally, after tracking for nearly 3 hours, the tornado lifted west of the Rough River. Across its 165-mile path, the tornado would take the lives of 57 people and injure over 500 more, making it the deadliest tornado since the 2011 Joplin tornado. Over 3,700 homes and 300 other properties were either heavily damaged or destroyed across the path. This tornado would go down as one of the longest tracking tornadoes in history, as well as one of the deadliest in recent history. Tim Marshall described the tornado as being the closest to EF5 since the 2013 Moore tornado. It's been nearly 3 years since this tornado, and the towns have been in the cleaning and rebuilding process ever since. In Mayfield, many of the heavily damaged homes were demolished, and the process of building new homes has been underway. Unfortunately for multiple of the impacted towns, other major weather events have taken place, including a flash flood emergency in Mayfield in 2023. Another example is in May of 2024, Another intense EF4 tornado tore through the northeastern edge of the path, including Dawson Springs. Despite this, the residents remained resilient and continued the rebuilding process, setting the example for how communities should rebuild. Before I end this video, I'd like to thank you all for watching. This took a lot of time and work, so I appreciate watching until the end. If you at all found this enjoyable or informative, please consider subscribing, as it would help me out a lot. Also, I have linked down in the description a lot of sources that have a lot of good info on the tornado if you would like to learn more. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later on MeteoCube.